Welcome back to At Your Service, where we have weekly conversations with seasoned service-based business owners. And I have a very special guest, my good friend Antonio. Antonio, I will pass it off to you just to give sort of a quick background about who you are.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you for having me on. It's pretty crazy. Like how long has it been since we met? Like
Like,
4 years at this point, and
yep.
time flies. Like the amount of growth that we've both experienced since we've met has been astronomical. And super blessed to know you and just watch you evolve. So thank you for having me here. But yeah, I don't know if there's anything short about my introduction, but I'll keep it pretty short. Uh, you know, Basically, bring it back 5, 6 years prior. Pretty much baseball was everything for me. I was 22 years old, about to go play professional baseball, aspiring to go to the minor leagues. That was plan A, B, C, and D. And due to COVID, due to a bunch of other circumstances, as well as me not being able to handle adversity as well as I can now, I quit on myself and I stopped playing at that time. And I had so much more passion for the game. I had so much, still a lot of energy to lead teams and continue to win. And that immediately went to a halt. And I started to realize that I'm just like the corporate ladder was not for me. So I've never had a job in my life. I went immediately after 6 to 8 months of battling identity loss and depression, got right into sales, specifically on the financial services side. And we built a really lucrative practice selling insurance, investments. Pretty much, if you had a pulse, you could become a client at that time, working for a company. And my best friend, who I went to boarding school with, Landon, who you've met, uh,
Yep.
since we've become business partners. We're partners in 4 different businesses today, and we stayed in contact. He was in the same industry, but just on a different team. And we were just like, hey, why don't we start a podcast and let's just see what happens. Let's just talk about being 23 years old and self-employed and navigating this, excuse my language. Can I curse? Is that
Yeah,
okay?
yeah, that's fine.
This fucked up world of self-employment. And we quickly realized that no one wanted to listen to two 23-year-olds talk about success when we had so we had $500 in our bank account collectively, maybe. And so we quickly started to make a pivot to leverage, really successful people in business to come on and just bring more of like a Q&A interview style podcast. And initially we did it because we couldn't afford their mentorship. So we were, just being slick around giving them a platform to, get their content and get their name out there, but also to learn about how they reverse engineered their success. Because then we started to implement everything that they were saying. Eventually we became valuable enough to like bring a value proposition, offline to them. That resulted in multiple, joint ventures, partnerships. 500 episodes later, when you do 4 episodes a week for 5 years in a row, some really cool things happen. We quit our jobs, built an agency, sold that agency, started a consulting business that operates as a fractional family office for service business owners,
Nice.
really helping fill the gaps where most people are dropping the ball on the advisory piece, which is true advice, unbiased. In the world of financial advisory, tax planning, asset protection, charging a flat fee so that we can actually give advice for the advice sake only.
Yeah.
And working with people that are doing 5, 50, 100 million in revenue, there's so many auxiliary services that they need. And so we built a ton more solutions. Now we own a portfolio of service-based companies, and we're rocking and rolling. It's been really fun.
There's a lot to unpack there, Antonio. That's you've had quite an incredible journey. It's pretty awesome. So when we first met, it was really interesting because I think you were on vacation. I think it was either in Mexico or maybe the Bahamas, but you still took my call, and I was on your podcast, and we raised some money when I was fundraising for charity. So that was our first interaction. So, I think it speaks volumes to your character, just being able to be charitable as well. So I just wanted to point that out before I talk about that piece for sure. And, so I love asking this question. And for you, I kind of want you to dive into after you were an athlete and also when you started your consulting business as well. So what was a challenge, I guess, that you faced after you play baseball, and then another challenge once you started your consulting business, and how did you overcome both those
Sure.
challenges?
Yeah. So I mean, like there's not one single challenge that comes along with it. There's more
Sure.
challenges than there are less, right? But the major challenge when I was first getting out of baseball was realizing that I wasn't owed anything,
Mm,
getting out of my own way, and understanding that my only problem in life up until that point was that I really had no problems. I grew up in a bubble, Long Island, New York, super upper middle class. My family, thankfully for them, they gave me everything I ever wanted. Went to an all boys boarding school that was like for like elite athletes or upper middle class people. So got to experience a lot of things. Never had to like live out of my car and all those types of stories that somebody has been able to leverage. You hear people that have been homeless and then took that into millions of dollars, et cetera. I don't have that story, and I felt guilty for that for a long time. That my rock bottom was a lot different than somebody else's, but everyone has their own proverbial and metaphorical rock bottom. And
mm,
your story is powerful, and your story is yours. That's the only thing that you can own, and not try and rip off somebody else. You should own that, whether it comes from going from the top to staying at the top, or going from the bottom, getting to the top, etc. And so with that, I had to get out of my own way and personally develop to the point where I realized I was not entitled to anything. And this
right.
next chapter of life, you got to constantly be working hard, especially in business, just as in baseball. Like you have to play at an elite level all the time, because it's not enough to win. It's about winning and staying there at the same time. When we launched the consulting platform, the toughest thing that I initially had to get over was the head trash that I don't belong, because I went from working with upper middle class families immediately to only business owners making $3 to $5 million a year plus.
Mm,
And I started to realize that those people, like your head trash thinks like, hey, they're making a lot of money, they know what to do with it. It could not be more of the opposite. It's so insane, because when people make a ton of money and they're really good at their business, they start to realize as they continue to evolve that they're good at what they're good at, and they should be delegating everything else. Specifically, when it comes to making income, their entrepreneurs are not as amazing as turning that into wealth. Also
mm,
saving money in taxes, et cetera. And they pay what I call a stupid tax by blindly trusting all of their other professionals, when all of their other professionals are, to say it bluntly, ripping them off. The CPA is giving you advice based on how little time they have to spend. Your financial advisor is giving you advice based on how many fees they can collect. Lawyers are billing you hours. There's a lot of integrous people in the landscape,
for
but
sure.
initially, like, you have to try and make sure everyone's there for your best benefit. So as we started to realize that, I got out of that head trash, and then it became just how do you stay consistent? How do you learn from your clients and deliver a world-class experience?
Yeah, no, I think that's incredible. And, going back to your point too about just charging a flat fee as opposed to a commission structure where, essentially people call themselves a fiduciary, yet they have the ability to earn more based on, what they can charge their client. So there's no real alignment there. So what you said about just sort of charging a flat fee, I think is awesome. And, it's pretty interesting because when I see your Instagram stories, sometimes you you sort of mention that there are a lot of CPAs out there who they're not very proactive with their clients. Could you kind of speak to that a little bit more?
I mean, today more than ever, this exact day, we're filming this on October 15th, 2024. This is a painful day for a lot of people, because
Yes.
their extensions are due. If you don't file right now in most states, you're going to start paying penalties. And most people haven't had any conversations with their CPAs, and they've been thinking that their CPAs are just going to be reaching out to them. And people are just starting to focus on 2023's taxes, when
Mm,
all of my clients we're already done with 2024's tax strategy. There will be very few clients that file on extension for next year. We're already done, and we completely eliminated, or at least have an idea of what the tax bill is going to look like if a client wanted to pay taxes. And I give a big if, because I give you a scenario where you can healthily not pay taxes. So I wanted to create a scenario where instead of every quarter your CPA is calling you just to throw more money into the government, because every quarter you should be paying your quarterlies according to them, to proactively pay into the government. Why don't we focus on every quarter having a conversation on what we can use that money for to drive more money back to my business's bottom line and save taxes at the same time? Because there's a
mhm.
really awesome way to build wealth and the government incentivizes you through tax savings to do so, i.e., real estate, the game that you play in, equipment. The government incentives you, to provide housing and jobs and to stimulate the economy. And so, for me as an entrepreneur, if I can continue to do so, I can continue to grow my wealth as well as save taxes. And every time I'm saving 30-40% that I don't have to partner up with the government for, that's significantly increasing my ability to compound my wealth year over year. And everyone just has this idea that, every year I just got to pay 30-40% to the man, and they rely on their CPA to do so. CPAs are 100% necessary, but you have to create the frame of the CPA is typically the person that's going to help keep you in compliance. And then you want to focus on, as your income continues to grow, maybe getting a tax strategist, getting a bookkeeper involved so that you have more of a team approach designed to keep you in compliance, but also save you as much money as you can in a really healthy way by not just writing everything off.
For sure. 100%. You always have to prepare, obviously, and you don't want any surprises when April 15th comes, or to your point, if you have to file an extension. Yeah, I love that. And now, obviously, I don't know the landscape for your business in terms of the competition that's out there, because quite frankly, when I do hit those revenue metrics, you'll be my first call. But what makes you stand out from your competition?
This type of model is relatively a blue ocean, the way that we deliver, because we come from the financial advisor background. Most financial advisors are still trying to sell products.
Mhm.
And I'm a huge believer that you as a business owner, we only work with business owners. So typically, if you're an athlete, I've had some, big athletes that, I'm under NDA, so I can't explain, but some of the top guys in the NFL, MLB that we work with before, it's just very tough to consistently add value in the way that we go about delivering value to a really highly compensated W-2 person that doesn't have the flexibility as someone that owns their own business. And so we solely focus on working with business owners. I love the service-based space because I'm a service-based business owner, so I can speak the language, I can relate a lot more. And then when you're in the world of products, costs are just derived from a lot of other economic factors that you might not be able to control. And so I'm not the expert in how to drive more margin back to you in the, when you're a product-based business. We can help, but I typically focus on services. With that, where I think we separate ourselves is the service that we provide, truly. Most people sell you this bill of goods, even in this exact model, and then still try and focus on a couple of major things. We are men of our words. I lose sleep at night in making sure that every single thing I told a client is actually getting done. So when you actually sign up and you get this, entire list of things that we're going to do for you, we actually get them done. And somehow that actually sets you apart in business than 90 to 95% of the rest of the competition, just by actually doing what you say and then answering phone calls back in time. Randomly reaching out to clients, sending gifts. All these different things are designed to curate an experience. And so we are so much more focused on client retention than we are on acquisition, because the retention is the best form of marketing that feeds the acquisition. It's very tough to get an ecosystem of clients on the front end when you're starting a business. It's an uphill battle. But the second that you hit that critical mass of having a really solid pipeline, then all you have to do is focus on keeping your clients and delivering a service. Business owners talk to other business owners. They eventually create this referral machine for you. And then you have an endless supply of people because you're just constantly getting your stuff out there.
For sure. Yeah. I think there's a lot of business owners and a lot of salespeople who are very focused on generating new customers, when if they, I think if they look at their ecosystem, a lot of companies, especially service-based business owners, at least 30% of their revenue, or it really comes from repeat customers and people who they already have in their network. So I think it's a great point.
Yeah, I think where most people get it, I don't want to say wrong, because there's no right or wrong. It all depends, different strokes for different folks. But for me, the biggest shift that I had to make, going from more of a sales role where I work, I make income, that income then feeds my lifestyle. I want to think of it more like a business and the value that I'm creating to the actual business as an enterprise, because I want to sell this thing for a lot of money. And we have a path to sell this thing for well over 9 figures. And so with that, I'm not just focused on securing cash flow today. I have my certain cash flow that I need, and my recurring revenue base. Our recurring revenue already covers our fixed monthly burn in week 1. So the second I get my first pay run, my entire month's worth of expenses are covered, and then everything else is profit.
Wow.
And so when you have those safety parameters, you have predictability and your ability to grow a lot quicker and make more strategic investments into your business. And you start pulling levers around, how do I build the enterprise value a lot larger? And you could do that both organically by, building deeper into your service, and you could do that inorganically by vertically integrating and acquiring other companies. And we're doing both at the same time. And along the way, you still need to pay yourself because you need to live. But what you have to do is make sure that, like, the second that the business does 7 figures in revenue, you don't just go buy a Lambo, right? Like that's where you have to truly delay the gratification around, how do I build the enterprise value around this thing, increase my cash flow, and then eventually have a lot of sellability to this thing.
For sure. Yeah. No, that's awesome. I love that you have the end in mind and you're thinking about your exit strategy, because it allows you to look at your business and know where your time is best suited and how to optimize it and create these systems and processes, put them in place to make sure that you have just an amazing company. So,
well said.
Yeah, absolutely. Another question for you, Antonio. What do you think has been your secret, or one of your secrets, to really being able to grow your company?
Consistency. Very simple. Sounds corny because my slogan's consistency wins. We own the trademark to consistency wins. It's tattooed on my forearm. You can see it in the background. The name of our podcast is the Consistency Wins Podcast. The biggest change that I've ever made in my life was winning small every day. And when you first start creating those habits, go smaller than larger, because you want to create a system that allows you to make sure you're keeping those promises every single day, because the promise kept to yourself eventually translates to self-confidence. And so most people don't have this layer of self-confidence, and they want to go get a huge win first. Just win small every single day, and eventually you prove to yourself that it is guaranteed to happen if you give yourself a long enough time frame. That eventually translates to confidence, where some people think I'm cocky, but I just know that my results are guaranteed because I'm willing to put in the work. Yeah. And I'm willing to do it, for a long enough time frame. So, like, for example, when I moved to Miami, the shiny object syndrome and the imposter syndrome was insane. I moved there as a highly compensated sales guy, and started continuing to build our business, and we started to build this business as well. While everyone around me is like hopping from different businesses and offers, and they're making millions of dollars, but it's so short lived. And everyone respected me because all I did every day was just kept pounding and pounding, taking the sales calls, building the business, building our team, etc. And over time, it's like that bamboo tree that compounds. And since then, within a year and a half, we built over 2 businesses that have 7-figure run rates, and they're hitting exit velocity pretty quickly. So it's been incredible. And the only thing I can say is consistency.
I love that, Antonio. Yeah, that's unique consistency in life. And to your point too, and I see Atomic Habits there in the background. One of my favorite books. And having these habits in place and being able to stack habits as well, I think people learn that over time. Super important. So appreciate you mentioning that.
Yeah, of course.
So a few more questions here. Do you so you obviously have a business partner. Do you believe that it's important for a person to have a partner in business?
I'd be out of business if I didn't, for sure. The nature of myself, which is why I think entrepreneurship is just a common denominator of how much you're willing to invest in yourself personally. It's simply a byproduct of that, because the second that you start to create leverage and make higher level decisions where you can't just grow through brute force, or else you're going to burn out real quick, you need to start discovering who you are and how you go about making decisions, because that's like ingrained into your DNA and your temperament. So I've invested a lot of time and money and energy into understanding how I go about making decisions, and not trying to fight that, but leveraging my business partner Landon to supplement that. And we started to really understand who we are and how we operate in the workplace. And instead of creating this, we always have healthy friction, which I think is really good. But instead of creating this me versus you thing, why don't we start to build the business around who we truly are? And maybe there's eventually another person that we have to hire to supplement some of the things that we're both not good at. And so that's what we started to do. And that really changed our lives. And so, like, the way that Landon and I allude our business partnership to is, I'm all gas, he taps the brakes, and we both drive the steering wheel. So if it was just me, I would have massive growth, but not be able to finish things. If it was just him, we would have growth, but it would be a lot slower, and you have to think through a lot more methodically. When there's things that are two-way doors, Jeff Bezos talks about this all the time. If there's a two-way door decision where you can always go back, make that decision in a heartbeat. Use your gut, because the indecision is the worst decision that you can make. Everyone's trying to think so like calculated between these small decisions. Just make the decision and take action. That doesn't mean that the larger decisions like merger with another company or acquiring a new company. A lot of decisions need to be thought out more methodically. But the decision to like test something in your business, and the worst thing that can happen is it fails, but you don't lose goodwill in the marketplace. Do it, man. Find out the data. That's what it's all about. Finding out data, testing, and taking action. Because where I see most people lag is because of the indecision. They're waiting for the perfect time, and the time's never perfect.
For sure. And I never heard that quote or that idea from Jeff Bezos, but I guess an example would be running Facebook ads or running Google ads. Would that be an example of like a two-door?
Totally. Because the worst thing you can do is lose money, right? And if you, where you need to think calculated in that scenario is like, okay, what's our budget? What are we willing to lose? The second you do that, take action, right? Because as you run the ads, all it is testing. You're going to lose money when you first start running ads. Switch the word, especially in the marketing space, switch the word marketing with testing and failure with data. Because a long enough time frame, you're going to have enough testing and data to then find out what actually works. If you have a good product, because maybe your shit sucks. Excuse my language, but like your market will tell you if your stuff sucks. It's never really your sales team, and if it is, then you got to get better salespeople or train them better too. So,
for sure, no, absolutely, AV, awesome. So, just a few more questions outside of what you do for work. So, number one, if you weren't in your current line of work, what else would you be doing?
I would just be running a private equity roll up, 100%. That's what I like. That's what I intend to do. It's kind of what I'm like pseudo doing right now. All I study around. I love the world of private equity, venture capital. Just being able to create value add opportunities for other small business owners, specifically in the service-based space. As I continue to grow my knowledge base and understand the ability to analyze deals. Bring people together. That's my superpower, is being able to connect two parties together and find ways to have value add. My superpower is not creating something from scratch. I'm not the most original guy, but I'm the greatest copycat of taking something that's originally in place and then adding new IP to make it a lot better. So supercharging an existing idea. And I think a lot of people just try and invent the new Amazon, where like, I don't need to. I can just create something that works and add to it, especially in the form of client service. Because ultimately that's the goal, is to get results for clients and services.
100%.
So with that's what I would be running, is a way to understand the world of financing, line up acquisitions, and bring those parties together and just build.
I love that. AV. Another question here. So what is something that nobody or very few people know about you?
I'm obsessed with fiction books. Obsessed. I read, I don't boast about it, but I probably read over, 50, 60 regular personal development books a year. I'm reading fiction probably more.
Really?
Obsessed. Because my brain doesn't ever shut off, right? So like if I don't create an outlet where I'm truly enjoying something, I can't shut off my brain. And eventually that leads to, like, even if it's in a positive direction of like, it's going to generate our business more money or things like that, it's still unhealthy, because like, ultimately you're doing this for the freedom to be able to like take a breath and relax and have peace, build a family, etc. At least for me, travel. So for me, fiction allows me to shut my brain off and wander. I'm a very structured guy, so the ability to wander has been awesome. I've parlayed that with actually writing fiction. So the cool thing about like writing fiction is that there's no deadlines. There's no like finality. It's whatever you want. The landscape that you can create is infinite. So allowing my brain to just wander and play around with it. And then also competing. I'm just obsessed with competing. So like when I think flow state, I think reading fiction and competing at the same time, because my mind isn't on anything else besides in that zone.
I love that. That's awesome, AV. So what's one of your favorite fiction books?
Red Rising. Have you ever heard of the Red Rising series?
No.
I'm like a nerd for like this sci-fi intergalactic space war stuff. So yeah, that's my jam. And then also like the personal development style fiction, like stuff that, we used to jam on in our book club, things like that.
Go-Giver, Bob Berg, yeah.
Prophecy, all those types of books.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So just two more questions and then we'll wrap up. So what is one way you like to give back?
There's a lot, right? Like I'm mandatory 10% of every profit we make goes to something. I don't just blindly give to a specific church or anything. I'm very faith based. I give to Christian business owners. That's
Love
a
that.
huge thing that I do. I think making that amplifies the impact than just giving it directly to the church as well. And then I love to donate time as well, as much as I can without disrespecting my time.
Love that. Very last question. Where can people go to reach out to you?
Uh, Instagram is probably my most active platform. It's Antonio Vaglica Jr. But then I am, thank you for paving the way on this. I am aggressively getting back into LinkedIn. So follow me there and I will, definitely get back to you on that. Antonio Vaglica Jr. on LinkedIn.
I will hold you accountable, AV, if I don't
The
see
only
you.
challenge I have with LinkedIn is I love writing long form and it inhibits your ability to write super long form.
It does.
Facebook doesn't. So
Yeah. Well said. All right, Antonio. Appreciate